distinction of having the record for the longest budget speech by duration and the shortest. But we still have to see whether it is the shortest. But let's get to the 5 key takeaways. Takeaway number 1 is on taxes. We have with us, of course, Radhika Pandey, Associate Professor at NIPFP, to run us through the takeaways. So Radhika, takeaway number 1, taxes. What has she said?
So as was expected in the interim budget, she did not make major announcements on taxes. That was expected and that was desirable. I think that if there are any changes, that will be announced in the full year's budget.
So no tax cuts?
No tax cuts. So that was expected that in fact in this budget, in the interim budget, we won't see much of changes in the tax regime. And that is what we have seen both in terms of direct taxes, indirect taxes, custom duties. There have not been any change announced on the tax front as a whole. Only changes that have been announced is more towards easing the processes and some attempts have been made to ease the burden of tax payment. So on processes, some initiatives have been taken, but not on tax cut per se.
Okay. So, I mean, that's not great news for you and me. We were all hoping for some tax cuts, and especially before the elections, we were thinking maybe there might be some tax cuts. But from government finances point of view, it's the responsible decision. Right. It's the good decision to make. Now, takeaway number 2 is on infrastructure.
Right. Yeah, so the focus on infrastructure continues, as we've discussed earlier also, that one of the expectations was that focus will continue, though at a moderate pace, and that is what we have seen, that capex has expected to increase by 11% to 11.11 lakh crore. So that is one big takeaway, that the thrust on capex continues, though the finance minister says that now that private investment is picking up, the need for the government to continue priming the economy through heavy allocation to capex gets dissipated. So it's not so much, but yes, there is another 11% hike to capital expenditure announced in this interim budget, which takes as a percentage of GDP, the capital expenditure rises to 3.4% of GDP.
Right.
And another element to this is that the 50-year interest-free loans to states for supporting their capital expenditure continues. So like last year, the finance minister had budgeted 1.3 lakh crore.
Right.
This year as well, rupees 1.3 lakh crore has been budgeted for as 50-year interest-free loans.
So that's the third year now that they've provided these.
Yeah. So before that it was 1 lakh crore. The last year increases to 1.3 lakh crore.
Right.
And this time also the allocation is kept at rupees 1.3 lakh crore.
So do you feel that this is a gentle indication that in the medium term the government's going to pull back on its capex?
Absolutely. So if you read the various documents, particularly from the CEA, if you look at the review of the economy that was released on Monday, 2 days before the budget announcement, there also there is this discussion that going forward, as private investment picks up, the government will scale back the kind of thrust that it provided post-COVID, 2 years after COVID. That won't be needed, and in fact that is needed to maintain the fiscal consolidation, as what we will be discussing, that they have really gone very aggressive on meeting their fiscal consolidation target. So that would require them not going too much on capital expenditure, reducing it at a moderate scale. So I think there is a very fine balancing act between maintaining the thrust on capital expenditure, but also maintaining an eye on fiscal discipline.
Right. And now coming to fiscal discipline, that's our third takeaway. The fiscal deficit target, they've not only have they done better than their target for this current year, but for the next year, it's quite an ambitious target that they've set. So
yes, so that is very ambitious, and that is very good on the part of the government, because if we look at our stock of debt, it's still very high. So we need to move very aggressively on our fiscal consolidation target. It gives a very good signal to investors. It gives a good signal to our credit rating agencies. And at a time when, Indian government bonds are being included in
global indices,
the emerging bond market indices, it's a very strong signal that the government is serious about fiscal consolidation. And that is what is reflected in this year's numbers, because the government has overachieved its target. 5.9% of GDP was the fiscal deficit target for this year,
Right.
and it's they are saying that they will achieve 5.8%. Due to tax buoyancy, due to better, particularly direct tax collection. So, despite moderate nominal GDP growth, they are achieving the target. That's very commendable. And for next year, also surpassing all expectations, because expectations was that government would fix either 5.3 or 5.2%. They have fixed a 5.1% fiscal deficit target. That means for next year, they will fix it at 4.5, and they will be, at least on paper, they will be able to achieve their medium-term fiscal consolidation deficit target, which they have been reiterating for quite some time now, starting from post-COVID.
They've been saying that this is their
they've been
target, that's what they'll
yeah,
do.
so towards that, they have walked the talk, and for 5.1% of fiscal deficit target, along with 11% growth in capital expenditure, I think it's a good balance. What we do need to see is what happens to revenue expenditure. I think we will see once we get the fine print what is their pegged growth of revenue expenditure going forward. What are they going to do about subsidies? But early indications do suggest that they are going to slash subsidies.
Right.
And again, that is very encouraging that government is moving on its fiscal consolidation roadmap.
Right. And also on that note, please do watch our Macro Sutra episode that will come out tomorrow. That's going to be a deeper dive into the budget. Right now, we're just doing the quick takeaways that we can tell you, but it'll be a deeper dive. So please do tune in tomorrow evening as well for Macro Sutra. So now, takeaway number 4 is the decisions on housing and tourism.
Right, yeah. So those are decisions to actually boost consumption. So on the one side, housing for PM Awas Rural, they have increased the allocation, and there is another scheme for housing for middle class. So
Right.
now that is again a very encouraging step, because if we look at the housing sales data, what we are getting to see is that there is a move towards premiumization. The demand for housing sales has been rising at a robust pace, but not for entry level houses, or not for houses for the middle class.
Right.
So towards this initiative, I think it's a good step. It will help in bridging the concerns around K-shaped recovery also to some extent, because this is a scheme for housing for middle class. So
Right.
again, either in the form of building or living, some support is being provided for housing for middle class. So that's a big takeaway. And through housing, they are actually addressing two problems. One is providing support to middle class, and second is generating employment opportunities, because housing has a forward and backward linkage. It will provide, it will give support to the sectors that are related to housing, like steel and cement well.
Yeah. And tourism?
Tourism also, so that is a big takeaway from budget, particularly after the Pran Pratishtha ceremony at Ayodhya. I think there is a emphasis towards tourism, particularly spiritual tourism. I
And
think
there is iconic tourist centers that they talked about.
Tourism, tourist centers. The states will be encouraged to, develop, identify and develop their tourist spots. And for that also, states would be provided 50-year interest-free loan.
Right.
So I think if you listen to the budget speech very carefully, one of the main instrument of budget has been 50-year interest-free loans
for
to states for various things,
Yeah.
for capital support, for tourism development, for reforms towards a Viksit Bharat by 2047. So we do see this as an instrument which is in a way good, because it's not going to introduce fiscal burden at this time,
Right.
but at the same time it will nudge states to move forward on reforms, or either on capex, or also developing tourist centers.
And that's actually our 5th takeaway, which is the thrust to states in trying to achieve Viksit Bharat?
Yeah, so I think it's going to be a partnership-driven model on a number of fronts. Even if we look at on agriculture front, also there also a lot of steps have been taken, and everywhere the states are being encouraged to come on board
Right.
for various things. For as I said, for introducing reforms, for tourism, for agri support. So I think that's another instrument that the finance minister has used to introduce to ensure inclusive development, not only from the center's side but also from the states.
Right. So there you go. Those are our 5 key takeaways from the budget. Of course, as we go through the papers, there will be more, but these are the 5 highlights. No tax cuts, 11% growth in infrastructure spending, an overachieving of the fiscal deficit target, and a very challenging and quite a ambitious target for the next year as well, 5.1%. A push to housing and tourism is the 4th takeaway, and the 5th is a collaborative approach with the states to move towards a Viksit Bharat. So now, overall, Radhika, do you feel that this has been a responsible budget,
Yeah.
or whether do you think it's been populist at all?
No, I think it wasn't populist at all. It was responsible. I think the pulse of the budget was fiscally responsible,
Right.
and that we could see through various elements of the budget speech. There has been no tax cuts announced. There have been emphasis on housing, on tourism, which are employment generating, but at the same time, there are no big cash handouts. Even what
Right.
was being expected was about PM Kisan, that the cash handout
Would be increased.
I think that also has not been done. Mainly one reason is that it's an interim budget. And FM had said earlier that we should not expect very spectacular announcement. So the main underlying theme of the speech had been fiscal consolidation. Of course, we would have to look at the budget papers in detail to see what are the underlying assumptions. Are they being too over optimistic about achieving the target? What are their assumptions about taxes, about particularly non-tax revenues,
Right.
disinvestments, subsidies? So, but it's a very interesting combination of having a 11% growth in capital expenditure and at the same time moving very aggressively on fiscal consolidation roadmap.
Right. So there you go. On that note, that's all we have from you. These are the key takeaways. Please tune in for Macro Sutra tomorrow. And also today evening, there'll be another discussion I'll be holding with a set of panelists to again discuss the budget. So stay tuned, keep tracking the print. We have a lot coming up for you on the budget. Thank you so much for watching.